Well, imagine if throughout your entire life you constantly felt as if you had been born with the wrong gender. Imagine being a little boy and knowing instinctually that even though you had all the male parts, you were in fact a girl on the inside. Now, I don't know much about people who live with gender identity disorder, but I'm guessing that life for those people would have to sharing out more than its fair share of challenges. Jasmine Styles, or Steve as he is still known for the time being at least, is at the age of 26 finally on the cusp of transitioning himself from man to woman. Steve's on the line tonight. G'day, Steve.
Hey, how you doing?
One thing I admire about you, even though I've never met you, is the fact that you said to me, Tim, you can ask me any question you want. I'll just answer it as honestly as I can. Why have you chosen to tell your story like this in such an open fashion?
Just because there's so much confusion out there about what gender identity disorder is and how it affects us, that if no one's willing to stand up and give the honest answers, no one's really ever going to get it.
I've got to get this clarified from the start. Am I calling you Steve or Jasmine?
Depends on what shirt I'm wearing at the moment.
Well, let's just say this, because we're planning on talking together as an ongoing type of thing throughout your process. So let's start off with Steve tonight, if it's all right with you. Mm-hmm. And then as you work through the process, we'll try and pinpoint exactly the right moment where I should start calling you by Jasmine, which is the name you've chosen for yourself when you do eventually become a fully fledged woman.
Sounds fine to me.
Good on you, mate. Now, I know, Steve, that this has been a lifelong journey for you, and we're going to talk about all of that very shortly. But I'm talking to you at a time when really the last 2 weeks has probably been the most significant period of your life. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. You've got the official authority in your hands to proceed with your transition. You've started your hormone treatment. And if all that wasn't momentous enough, you've also formally announced your intention to change genders to the people that you're working with.
That is definitely correct.
Yeah, it must be an incredibly exciting time for you. But, I mean, your head must be spinning too.
Yes, trying to keep my feet on the ground at the moment is a bit of a task. It's been a roller coaster, but as anxious as you get around such momentous events, the liberation of being able to start this process is just phenomenal. Liberation,
what a fantastic word for this, because like I say, a lifelong journey. And for people listening who might be, I basically want to set a tone here. I don't want people to feel sorry for you, because I know that you feel exactly the same way. This isn't something morbid. You might have had a struggle, but this is like all your Christmases have come at once, isn't it?
Indeed. And that's one of the messages that I've been putting over with the people that I work with. Everyone starts focusing on all that negative stuff. They start thinking about, oh, that must have been so hard, and it's going to be such a painful process to go through this transition, both with the negative opinions in public and, the family and the friends and the danger of what could possibly happen with career, etc. But my response to that is truly that this is the start of a process where I'll finally get to, wake up in the morning and see my own reflection in the mirror. This is the start of a process where I can walk out of my home and people can identify with me as I identify with myself, rather than identifying with me as a mask that I've created. So the joy that comes with this process is equal, if not, exceeding the short-term pain that I'm going to experience as a result of making this decision.
Oh boy, that is really powerful stuff. You're really, in effect, about to meet yourself for the very first time. Now, recently you told the people that you work with. Now, as I understand it, there was quite an announcement, and I asked you off the air if people had any idea, even some of the people, what you were about to do, the journey you were about to embark on, and you told me no one had any idea. So you've got to tell me, what has been the reaction of the people that you work with when you announced that you were about to change from a man to a woman?
The reaction was obviously one of shock. The overwhelming support that I've received was an absolute joy. And yeah, look, there are a couple of people who are clearly slightly uncomfortable with the topic. It's not something you come across every day, but they're reacting quite professionally, and they're realising that this is a workplace, and they're not saying anything negative whatsoever. And then there are people coming up to me and they're asking me the questions of, "Whoa, are you going to change your last name, or are you, where did you choose your name, or how does the process work?" People want to know what I've got to go through from start to finish and how long it's going to take. And
do you mind the questions? Do you mind those questions being thrown at you?
Not at all. Not at all. If I wasn't in my shoes, I think I'd be curious as well.
Absolutely. Well, like I said at the top of this program, I've got a lot of dumb questions that I want to throw your way, things that, I'm curious to ask about how it works, and we'll certainly get to that. It's also interesting, the spotlight in your organisation, in your workplace where you work, is currently on you, but I bet you're learning as much about the people around you as they are learning about you.
I certainly am. As I said, I was expecting some negative reactions, and I'm actually learning that people around me are far more open than what I initially thought.
Now, Steve, we're going to be following your journey hopefully all the way through, and I know it's been a long journey and you've still got a long way to go. I need to ask you to take us back to the beginning. How far back can you go in your memory where you remember feeling that you were a girl, not a boy?
When did I feel like I was a female? Well, the answer to that is actually my entire life. And there is no specific age. It literally is my entire life. When I look back at the things I used to want to play with, when I look back at the way I interacted and the mannerisms that I had, even as a very little child, it was all quite feminine. The next part of that question is, when did I realise that I was actually a female? And that was when I was about 9 years old in grade 5.
Okay.
I sort of started to understand that the behaviours I had naturally were kind of being curved by my parents. They wanted me to stop doing certain things and start, playing more of the sports and playing with the boy toys more. And they very actively started, discouraging certain behaviours of mine that I realised were the behaviours of the girls that I knew. And that's when I sort of realised, hang on, but I want to be like her. I am like her. Why do I have to be like the boys? And so that was the period of realisation of what the condition that I had.
That must have been really tough on yourself and on your parents, where they probably noticed way back, even as a toddler, that you were acting in quite an effeminate way. And did they seek advice? Why were they encouraging you to act in a more masculine way? Were they basing that on some advice that they may have got somewhere along the line?
No, it was a case of, I actually have a brother, and it was so having my brother beside me showed quite a contrast. It was, okay, so here's a young boy, and he's only 3 years older than me, so it wasn't like a massive difference. But it was a case of, here's one young boy doing all the things you would expect, and here's one who's not. But I don't think my parents even realised just how much my behaviour was being curved by them. Certainly they were shocked.
Can you think of a time or an instance where your parents did redirect you?
Things like, can you remember the troll dolls that they used to have?
Sure can.
They were the closest thing I was able to get to a Barbie.
That was your compromise, was it?
And so I used to I used to play with toys like that quite a bit. I was very fond of singing and dancing, and when I was singing and dancing, I wasn't singing and dancing to male songs, I was singing and dancing to female songs. So it was, I didn't want to play the shoot 'em up games on the original Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Master System. I wanted to play the fun Walt Disney girly games. I was a rather aware child, so once I noticed them curving these behaviours, I actually did curve them, because I realised it wasn't appropriate to my parents. So for them it was only quite a short-term problem, I guess, and as you said, I don't like to think of it as a problem either, but for them it was a short-term problem, so they probably don't even remember it as much as I do, because I started playing sports and I started playing the other games with my brother, like on the more violent and more male-focused games on the computers.
That's really interesting to me, Steve, because you actually did actively try to fit in as a male.
Oh, of course. All children try to fit in, and that's what, if you watch a child, they'll often start trying to do things that adults around them are doing if there's no other children,
but
because they want to fit in.
So unhealthy for a child to try to fit in against every grain in their soul and their body, despite what they are trying to do things that aren't themselves. So what kind of problems did that cause you at the age from 9, and particularly in your teenage years?
I became quite angry. Obviously, when you can't be yourself around anyone, and you're constantly trying to change the way you do things that are normally natural for most other people, you do feel oppressed. You do feel a bit hard done by, I guess.
Were you quite isolated back in your childhood years?
Oh, for sure. I couldn't make friends as easily as most other people, because, again, I felt like I was pretending to be this person, and I couldn't wait to get home and get to my room and not have to pretend. I'd close my door, and when I closed my door, I would actually... I might have had a teddy bear or a troll doll out at the time, and I would pretend that the teddy bear or the troll doll was me, and that I was my own friend. So Stephen, in essence, actually became my best friend growing up, and I would project my own personality onto the toys that I was playing with.
You were really externalising all those problems there, Stephen. Tell me, I'm interested to know about bullying. Most people who are listening to you now would assume that during, particularly, I suppose, your teenage years, unless, of course, you were laying low, and it sounds like you might have been doing that as well, was bullying a problem for you?
Through school, it actually wasn't. As I mentioned, I did really cover up the person that I was.
You must be one hell of an actor.
you when you have to start so young, you do definitely learn to put on. You've learnt
your role well, yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't get bullied. I had a few people who thought that I was still a little bit feminine, and there were the questions of is this boy gay, and that did certainly come up every now and then, but. I played soccer. I was quite good at sport. So I managed to get myself through that without any issue. It wasn't until grade 10, late in grade 10, that I started telling people outside of my parents that I actually was gay.
So that was your first step. I'm really curious about this. Rather than coming out and saying to people something that you knew, which was, I am female. I'm trapped in this body. There is a female inside of this body. Instead of saying that, you actually took quite a daring step anyway, really, and you started confiding in people that you were a gay male. Why didn't you just confide in people that you were a female in a male's body? Because
it was a bit of a compromise. It came down to sort of having a look at things and going, what are people going to find easiest to tolerate? And I say tolerate on purpose. And I thought people are starting to tolerate gay a little bit more. And, if I am gay, then maybe I have a shot at finding some comfort of, finding that male energy and that loving energy that I eventually want to connect with. And I saw that as an opportunity to get some form of emotional connection with somebody, whereas at that time I thought if I go down the path of being myself, I'm going to cut myself off from any opportunity to have emotional connection with people, because they're not going to understand that. So it was a case of choosing the lesser of two evils, and again, I don't like that term, but it's the way I was thinking at the time, and going with what I thought would have the best possible outcome and be accepted by the most possible people.
Tell me about the first time that you confided in somebody about the real story, the fact that you did believe that you were female in your heart and in your soul.
I remember it very clearly, actually. Very close girlfriend of mine, a very, very good friend, someone who I'd actually worked with as well. We had to go to a work function, and I had just reached this point that I needed someone to see me. I needed someone to not see Steve, not see the mask. I needed someone to look in my eyes and actually know who I was. I was 24 at the time.
This is only a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Gee, it took you a long time, didn't it?
It did. And we finished this work function. We went back to her place, sat down, made a cup of tea, and I looked at her and I blurted it out.
What